Welcome back to our Tuesday chats. Today, I'm sitting down with someone I'm genuinely excited to introduce you to. Sammy is a tech architect who splits his time between the UK and Antigua. He works with the UK and Jersey government, and on top of that, he's building the platform for luxury locations. So when I say he operates at the top of his field, I mean it. Here's why this conversation matters. In a world that's moving faster than ever, finding the right tech architect, someone who can streamline your business, build the right processes, and bring in the right solutions so you're ahead of the game instead of chasing it. That's the difference between scaling and stalling. And here's the part I really want you to hear. In the Caribbean, we so often get left behind when it comes to tech, but Sammy's right here. He's in Antigua. We have someone who works globally right on our doorstep, and that is rare. But this isn't just for our Caribbean viewers. Wherever you're watching from, Sammy works with clients all over the world. And what makes him different is how he delivers. No jargon, no smoke and mirrors, just clear thinking you can actually use. So whether you're in St. John's, London, or anywhere in between, this is for you. In this conversation, we get to the key things that will help you start, help you change, and help you grow. So stay with us all the way through because the gold runs right to the end. Let's get into it. Sammy, take us back to your early days in Montserrat and how that kind of shaped who you are today now as a tech architect.
I guess what I remember the most is how small Montserrat was, and was small enough to know everyone. And it's almost like that becomes your roof. But what I remember the most is it's stuff like being able to walk around, pick fruit, and enjoy the real Caribbean.
Nature.
Yeah, exactly.
What age did you leave Montserrat?
I was 11, so I just started high school in the UK. But the thing that many people don't realize, I never went to grade 6. So even my youngest son, he's like, well, I've been to grade 6. So it's this little competition thing that we have.
So how old is grade 6? Sorry.
Here, it's when you turn 11, you then go into grade 6 at 11, and then into first form, which is the equivalent of year 7.
Oh, it's different in the UK, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I missed grade 6 altogether, so I never graduated from primary school.
Oh, yeah, but look at you now. So what was the driving factor from moving from the UK, from Montserrat?
Well, around in 1995, the volcano in Montserrat decided it was time to wake up.
Yeah.
And with the volcano waking up, we were evacuated a few times, and we then had the opportunity to go to the UK as we lost essentially 2/3 of the island to the volcano.
Was your house in the zone, in the
lava
zone?
We were in the what we call the danger zone.
Yeah.
The exclusion zone, and volcano was here. There was a mountain in front, and the house was just at the bottom of that mountain.
What was that like? Did you get a warning before?
Warning before the volcano went off?
Yeah.
No.
So can you?
I remember the early days, we thought it was just planes flying over, and that's the volcano having a little bit of a rumble, waking up. And by the way, these aren't scientific terms. I left that for the volcanologist, but we heard the rumbling, and it never really thought anything of it. And then, boom, there was a volcano, and there was an evacuation. And then I remember school. We went to school, and all the schools, everyone in the different uniforms from all the schools on that side of the island, we were in a tent at Bridge Primary School, and that's where we had our classes. So you had all the uniforms all in one class, and all the teachers pulled together to continue school.
But your house was gone?
Not initially, but that was in the exclusion zone, and then...
Right, so you can go back to it.
Now that side of the island, you barely see a house. There were like 5-6-story buildings that you can just barely see the roof now.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's if you remember back, they did something on the BBC about the buried city,
Yeah,
That was
I've been to Montserrat, so I've seen like all those houses that are,
yeah, that and no more.
Yeah, wow.
But yeah, that's where it all began.
So lucky but not lucky.
Yeah, well, the journey speaks for itself. It's whatever you go through. It
Yeah.
builds you into the person that you become and builds the resilience. And one of the things I've always said is that I'm no longer a stranger to change, because one day we woke up, we're going to school as normal. A couple of days later, we weren't, and life changed. And then we were evacuated again and again, and then we moved to the UK. Then I moved back, and then moved back to the UK. So change has been a constant, and that's kind of transitioned into my professional life, because I'm comfortable with change where you'd find most people aren't.
So how do you feel when you land either in Antigua or Montserrat versus London?
Well, different country, different feeling, obviously. London is more like I'm switching into a mode where I bring the energy to the situation. But you land in Antigua and it's almost the doors open, you feel the heat, and the land gives you the energy, and you're connected, and anything's possible, and opportunities at every corner, and you listen and you smile, like how we met. Antigua was the gateway to that first conversation.
So people describe you as someone that always listens, and they tell me that it's quite rare to find that in tech architecture. Mm-hmm. Why do you think it's so important?
Well, I've worked across some of the biggest consultancies in the UK for a variety of customers, and what's been commonplace is a playbook for everything. And there was almost like a straight line that you traveled in, and if that was the problem, this was how it was solved, and it didn't always fit. And one of the things that is a rule of thumb at Inventure is that we listen first, and we understand, and we become part of the overall machine to really get to grips with impact, insight, and the outcomes that people want. And you only do that through listening, and that really changes essentially the outcomes and the approach you take for your clients, your customers, and whoever is impacted by the problem that you solve.
So walk me through what happens when you meet a new business or a new company and you're having kind of that discovery where you're listening. What's going on in your head?
Well, getting involved in what's going on in my head is a whole different story. But it's generally a formula. I'm not saying there's one formula that fixes everything, but there's one formula that gets you started. So it's got 4 steps, and that's how you get to that outcome. You discover, you think, you plan, and then you deliver, right? So in that discovery phase, you focus on listening, understanding what do you have, what do you want, what are your problems, where are your biggest pain points. Once you start gathering all of that information, it kind of points you into the direction of where you need to go. If it's a people problem, is it a process problem, or is it a little bit of each? And I call this the trifecta. It's an internal term, so you won't find the same definition in the dictionary. But it's the 3 pieces. You've got people, processes, and technology that drives any outcome. And we look at whether it's the people, whatever our solution is going to impact the people, the processes, or the technology, or if it's an element of all 3 that needs to come together. And any solution you look at has to involve all 3. It may mean you lean heavily on one, whether that's tech or people or existing processes. That's what you do. But you start building up the picture of the problem and the solution from bringing those 3 together. And a lot of the time, change is probably the most difficult part. Not building the solution, but being able to impact that change or get that change implemented. Because you have to consider people, feelings, processes, outputs, and how you actually bring that change together. And that's the key thing. Change. Not necessarily the tech, but managing that overall change. And that helps to guide where you take the tech.
You build unified tech stacks. When you've got the existing tech and you're trying to bridge the gap with the new tech, what do you find people's common mistake is?
Again, it goes back to what we were saying. People try and solve the problem with
something that fits one box.
Exactly. Or they want to go off and buy something because that's what competitors are using, and that's the solution that fits that gap. But they don't actually look at the overall impact of that, because you bring in a standalone solution, you're going to need integration. You're going to have to maintain integration. So building is only the very first start, or buying is the very first step. Then your processes need to integrate. So that's further technical design that needs to come into place. And really, what you want is to look at that problem end to end first. And that's where we go back to discover, think, plan, and then deliver. And that's the discover, thinking, and planning is where people often miss out on some of the greatest opportunities, because they look at problems isolated.
I have done exactly that, and multiple times trying to fix multiple different problems in my business, that nothing kind of flows until I met you. And it's quite scary how many things you end up buying off the shelf, thinking so you have solutions for every little part of your business, but nothing works together. So I'm very happy that I've met you. I'm sure you will all be too. What's the difference between solving a problem in a business and architecting a solution?
So, solving a problem, you fix what's in front of you. So it's saying, if I've got a flat tire, I'm just gonna take it off, put on a new one. That's fixing the problem. But understanding why you got the flat tire and how you prevent that from happening in the future is what architecture is about. You're architecting a solution for the long term, the medium term, and so on. So fixing what's right in front of you, yes, that solves a problem, but it doesn't fix the root cause of that problem reoccurring. And that's where that long-term thinking, that more strategic viewpoint starts to come into play. And like we say, problem solvers get through Monday, but an architecture makes sure that there's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday.
I like that. So how do you decide when to build new or when to stitch together what's already there?
Well, the default is always, you don't necessarily always build, because building is expensive and it carries risk. And it's also traditionally slower. There's many things that we could jump into why it has become a lot faster, but we'll leave that for right now. But stitching together is often faster, cheaper, and it's usually good enough to get you to that point. But you still need some of those initial concepts that we talked about. You still need to discover, think, and plan. How are you going to stitch that together? What's going to be the impact on your trifecta, the people, the processes, the technology, and so on. But then when you build, you're building to a very specific need. So build is more of a pull when you have a very niche requirement. And niche has started to go out the window a little bit, but we're starting to see that make a resurgent with the rise of AI tools and how we actually use those to drive automation, to drive many of the efficiencies that we've been chasing for years through buy. So now there's more on the table in terms of tools that we can use, where build starts to come into play. But it's all driven from I've discovered, I've thought, I've planned, and now this is how I'm going to deliver.
So you mentioned AI there for another conversation, but let me just ask you one thing. Businesses, watching this today, who do you think your your tech solutions, architecture, solution solving is for?
To be anyone with a strategy, a vision, anything. Look at the key thing about us. It's not just consultancy in a specific industry, because we've worked across many. What we do is in the name. It's called Inventure, but look at the wider context. And here again, giving you a view into architecture, it's invent your world or invent your whatever it is. Let's just put some dots behind that.
Yeah.
So if that's your ERP, let's invent that. If that's your brand new business, selling stuff online, let's invent that. If that's completely transforming an existing business to be more automated, to be more efficient, let's invent that. So whatever your world is, invent your ... You fill in the dots.
Okay, so basically it's the back end behind any business for a tech solution, making systems work for you so you...
It's that trifecta. It's
Right.
making systems, processes, and people work better to achieve whatever your vision is. So whatever it is, you have those three things that interact with each other to deliver your outcome. And at times, that process may be cumbersome, it may be manual, it may be I have to go get this piece of paper, then I have to pass it to the next person, then they have to pass that to the next person, and then the next person, and that's your process. But then you may not have enough people to be able to support that process, so getting anything done takes too long. And that could have many different outcomes, that you could lose customers become frustrated, then you have to then invest in customer service because more people are being upset because your processes don't work. So what we do is then we look at that overall unit, because you've now spent more in customer service because you've got more complaints. So
Yeah.
we look and say, okay, what's the process? If we have to streamline the process, we streamline that. But there's also that underlying tech element that helps to enable that process to be more streamlined. So we enable that process. So rather than a piece of paper going from person to person, it may be case management, and I'm not solutioning, but it may be case management. Let's just assume that it is after I've done some discovery, done some thinking. And we put that case management in place. So you're no longer passing manual pieces of paper. You can pick stuff up at any time of the day and move it on to the next stage. So you can get from that point A to point B a lot faster. So suddenly you don't have as many complaints because customers are getting feedback.
So
and if a piece of paper
Yeah.
is with someone, then how can you give an update if there's no visible status of where that thing is? So that's where that solution starts to bridge that gap. And it's not just the tech, it's the people that you put in place, because you'll have someone monitoring the statuses, and you then don't need to lean on your customer services team to then save the day as much. So you drive efficiencies in one, then that outcome impacts another set of people who have processes and technology at some level of maturity to be able to deliver their outcomes.
And then instead of, obviously you'll need less staff because you're making the process much more efficient, but then you can grow in other areas of your business because
Exactly.
these things have been taken care of.
It helps to drive growth.
Yeah.
And having lean processes in place that enabled by the right tech to enable the right people, that's where you want to be, because that's something that you can scale time and time and time again.
So tell me about Invent Your World. Why did you start it, and what is the gap you're seeing with the bigger consultancy firms?
Well, to be honest, I spent years inside some of the big firms, and watching really talented people produce hundreds and hundreds of pages of slide decks for clients, and all you needed for some of that was probably 2 pages and a phone call. And that model was built to sell hours, to drive outcome. Well, not necessarily drive the outcomes that people really wanted to see. So I started Inventure back in October 2021 because I wanted to be the architect that showed up and listened and drew the picture. And then out the back of that, I get out of the way so a team can deliver that. But then we started growing and building the team that does the delivery as well. So not only are we discovering, not only are we thinking, not only are we planning, we're helping to support our clients to deliver as well. And being more efficient at that. None of the padding, none of the crazy stuff, none of the theater. And like you said, from 200 slides to 2 pages, this is where your problem is. And then this is where it goes after that.
I feel like you've got the Caribbean side of you coming out in that business, because it's very much listening and relationship building, and instead of, you've got those big companies that you don't really get to speak to the owner and really, have that relationship going forward. I think that's a Caribbean thing. Would you say that?
As I say, it is in a sense, because by nature I'm very laid back, and I'd like to understand stuff before I jump in head first. And coming from a small island, if you trip up, everyone knows. So you're very diligent in terms of ensuring that every step that you make is the right one, and you weighed up your options and decided that's the way to go.
So Inventura's whole pitch is that there isn't that jargon. What made you have that as your founding principle?
Honestly, I was tired of meetings to set more meetings to show that you're busy that day. So, and especially where everyone just nods at the buzzwords and nobody really understood. And sometimes I think jargon is how consultants hide. It's also how clients get sold things that they don't need.
Yeah.
And that's the 250 pages of slideware. So again, that rule of thumb is that if I can't explain this to, it was my then 6-year-old, then I'm not doing a good enough job of understanding what that problem is. So you break it down, and one of the things that people normally comment on is that I've got an analogy for everything. And sometimes it comes straight off the top of the dome, and that's it. It's just boom. And I remember once explaining identity and access management and RBAC and all that stuff. Yes, that's jargon. but I explained that by using a door. For access management, for identity management, you knock at the door. I want to know who you are.
Yeah.
So that's what my login process is doing. It's saying, who are you? And it's like, okay, now I know who you are. I'll allow you to open the door. But until I know what you're allowed to do, I won't let you in the door. And that's essentially how identity is structured. And you take RBAC is that bit around, what are you allowed to do once you're inside? And that's the bit that starts to bring clarity to the problems. And when you can break it down like that, people can understand your solutions and see opportunity from their own visions and be part of that solutionizing.
In plain English. I think that is the key.
Yeah.
Tech talk is just too much. So you're doing work for the UK government and the Jersey government, obviously without breaking confidentiality. What does it take to scale and do something at that level? Well,
both Jersey and UK Gov. For UK Gov, I am the lead architect rebuilding the UK government's procurement platform. And that's the platform they use to essentially spend public money across any industry. So every contract, every supplier, every pound of taxpayer cash has to go through that door. And stuff like that, it's taken a while to get there and build the pieces together. But it all started with that initial discovery. And going back to identity, that's where it started. How do I know who you are and what you're allowed to do? Because you could be buying, you could be selling. It's that dynamic, and it all has to sit in one platform. And the thing is, the thing that drove all of this was transparency and policy and legislation. So you've got a highly regulated environment. So it makes your architecture and designing, more diligent, because there was so much to consider. It wasn't, here's a system that gives you some data and takes some data in. It was more than that. There were legal ramifications if we got this wrong. So that helps to drive some of the excitement in solving that problem. And then on the Jersey side, I think, this part's public knowledge, where you've got the world's just signed up to that global agreement where it brings the biggest multinational companies across the world who have to pay at least 15% tax wherever they operate. And Jersey is one of the financial centers of the world, which we all know. And it had to be up there with the initial jurisdictions that implemented this kind of change. And it's not, I don't think many jurisdictions have done that to this level of maturity just yet. So it's a real game changer to have been involved and essentially architected the solution, which was pretty much greenfield, because legislation is new, the agreements are new, the tax is new, and being able to work with existing systems and that's again bridging the gap between what's there and the new greenfield fun stuff.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds very interesting. It's like public sector tech has a reputation for being slow and bloated. As you're on the inside, what are your thoughts on that? Unfair or?
There is some truth, but it's largely unfair, because what's true is that yes, it is slower, but it has to be, because democratic governments aren't designed for speed. They're designed for accountability, and accountability has an overhead. And what's unfair, people assume that people inside aren't trying, or they aren't as talented, or any of those things, but they are. It's some of the best minds that I've worked with work within government, from strategy to innovation to that whole thought leadership. And they're rowing against the current that private sector's engineers would never have to row against. So we're talking about legislation, we're talking about legal ramifications. So the fair comparison isn't why government is slower than, say, Google or Microsoft or one of the big tech giants, is why does government work at all? Because given what it's asked to do, reframe it in a different, appreciating it differently. They're asking to be accountable, be transparent, where no private sector organization has to be transparent about their tech. There's some legislative requirements that they have to meet, but they're not 100% transparent, because that's competitive advantage.
Yeah.
So again, they're different ask, and as a result, it moves at a different pace.
I might say that on camera. I'm not sure I want to ask this question. So you are building the luxury locations at Tech Stack at the moment. When we first got talking and you had a look at what we had and what we had to do, what were your first thoughts?
Well, I didn't get to that stage of the process. I was listening, I was discovering. So throughout that discovery, it's then there's a lot of opportunity here. So where do you actually start when you have so much opportunity? And again, that's where
I like that you were like opportunity. I'm like, there's so much chaos. There's so many things going on.
Chaos breeds opportunity. The
True.
same like we said with the volcano. Because of the volcano and that chaos, we got the opportunity to expand our viewpoints. Because remember I said, coming from a small island, it often becomes the roof, but within that chaos, that's where opportunity is born. So again, change is the gateway for opportunity, and it may start with chaos, but if you keep your vision in mind and look to the goal, you can get there.
Yeah.
So you can get there.
I'm gonna get there. You're gonna get me there. So I remember having a lot of things that I wanted to automate and to have a system in place which didn't need some of my staff members. When you came into, not because I don't love them, I wanted them to do other things, just to clarify that. We have so much we want to do. So when you walked into Luxury Locations office and kind of met everyone and started going through the process of what you wanted to create, what were your thoughts on what you wanted to deliver?
To be honest, it's, again, we spoke about elements of what you do and how you do it. But when I actually walked into the office and I saw you and the team working together for that one afternoon, I could see the interaction between each other, interaction between clients, interaction between contractors, and saw almost a connected web of things that happen. And that's where some of the inspiration came from, because it then cemented the whole idea that the business is built off relationships. And that's again one of the attributes of doing business in the Caribbean that I've learned, is that it's built off relationships, not just a value proposition.
Yeah.
It's how you talk, the ability for your clients to know that you're at the end of the phone, and how you enable that as a business in the Caribbean is different to how you do that in London. So that's I think that's some of the driving forces behind your vision and how we're planning to enable that.
What are people going to see with this project between us, the luxury locations architecture, in this next coming year?
I think